On this episode of Old Joe's Reminiscence, when the fugitives encounter a city in ruins, they stumble upon a literal treasure trove of human knowledge. Originally titled Second Family, The Legacy was the fourth episode of the Planet of the Apes series in production order. Airing on October 11th, 1974, it was the fifth episode to be broadcast over the CBS television network. When paired together with episode 2, The Gladiators, this episode would form the second half of the 1980 TV movie Forgotten City of the Planet of the Apes. I've discovered that those episodes included in the TV movies are now owned by the Walt Disney Company. Copyright blocks force me to partially cover their content when I'm posting it. By the time filming began on this episode, things seemed to be coming together for the series' production. Previous scripts had referred to Urko as Urso, and the Burke character was originally Stan Kovac, with Burke having to be written in after it was changed. This is one of the first final scripts that already has Burke's name correct from the very beginning. Being that I'd peeked at the list of characters before viewing the episode, I'll go ahead and reveal that unlike the last outing, there are several humans appearing in this one. And the familiar orangutan Dr. Zaius makes a repeat appearance here. I'm fairly certain that I missed this episode when it originally aired, so to avoid spoilers, I didn't dig any deeper than that. Speaking of which, if you've been following my videos, you already know that there will be spoilers ahead, so I strongly suggest that you pause this discussion right here and now and find a way to view the episode before continuing with my review. I plan on leaving no stone unturned as I examine The Legacy. The Legacy begins, as usual, with our three main characters, astronauts Alan Virdon and Pete Burke, along with their chimpanzee companion Galen, walking along a wooded hillside. They pause to rest. Galen isn't used to all this walking, and he starts to gripe.
You know, before I met you two, I lived in a comfortable house. Yeah, I ate excellent food every day. I was really living a good life, and now look at me.
You're very hard to please.
They soon reach the crest of the hill, where they're in awe of the view, a matte painting of a cityscape. They push on, and they're soon shown in a city resembling the one where Burke and Urko were trapped in episode 3. A small dog follows them around. I think I would have jumped out of my skin if I'd been walking around in a strange, desolate city and I heard the sound of a yapping dog behind me. Galen only pays attention to it because it's hard for him to see it with his ape costume. An old man played by a veteran character actor, Victor Killian, walks out.
What do you call this city?
When Burke asks if there are any apes here, the man's eyes widen and he runs back inside. Then they hear horses coming, so they take off running. 4 gorillas on horseback are approaching. I'd expect the guys to hide in one of those nearby buildings. The camera follows them as they run down the street and hide behind some rocks. Then, through the use of a crane shot, we see the gorillas riding down the street while the camera drops to expose our stars hiding behind those rocks. Now, I don't usually notice camera techniques, but director Bernard Mcavitie's film work here impressed me. He used a crane or a jib to get these shots, giving more of a panorama of the destruction, and I'd say it adds to the air of suspense. Of course, all that debris in the street might have simply prevented them from laying down dolly tracks, making a jib their next best alternative. By 1974, Garrett Brown was still making test shots with his groundbreaking new invention, the Steadicam. It would be a year before his device would be used in the film Bound for Glory. They wonder what a certain columned building used to be, mentioning an arena or a coliseum, and Galen asks what those things are. He should have known that from the episode 2, The Gladiators. They find a plaque on the wall, and it reads Oakland Science Institute. That puts them farther east than I had guessed in my last episode review. That was when I had surmised that they were exploring in the vicinity of the San Pedro Valley beyond the San Francisco Bay. They decide to go inside.
It's interesting decor. Done an early American disaster.
That line was better than the scripted alternative. Virdon sees something blocked by debris that he finds interesting.
This looks like it could be something interesting.
He starts moving rocks and other debris away from there, and Galen pitches in. Burke doesn't look to be too happy about it, but he shakes his head, removes a backpack, and he joins in. In time, they've cleared access to a metal door. Virdon grabs the door's hand wheel, and he appears to be about to turn it clockwise. I was just about to remind him of lefty-loosey, righty-tighty when they cut to a close-up wherein he turns it counterclockwise. Anti-clockwise for my friends across the pond. There's a whoop as the vacuum seal releases. It was still intact. I got some Genesis 2 vibes there for a second. The door lifts, and we see an electronics rack in the middle of an otherwise empty room. There are some buttons, dials, slider controls, and what looks to be a rotisserie at the bottom. Virdon starts pressing buttons from right to left. An indicator lights up, and it starts ticking. Whatever the thing's power source is, it's still functioning after all these years. He continues pressing buttons until they're startled by a voice. They turn around, and they see a holographic image of a man in a white robe. That hologram scientist is played by John Lormer. Star Trek fans will recognize the white-haired Lormer as one of the survivors in the illusion that Captain Pike and the Enterprise crew encounter on the planet Talos 4. He later appeared as two different characters. He was in Return of the Archons, and he appeared as the old man who dies in For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. As Burke tries to figure out where the projection is originating from, the hologram goes on to explain that scientists have deposited the sum of all their scientific knowledge into vaults located around the globe. He's about to reveal the location of a nearby vault when the batteries die. Because, of course they do. They start to dismantle the device, and they find its power source. It's that rotisserie-looking thing.
What do you think?
Virdon thinks they can create a battery to get it up and running again. Galen isn't so sure.
Does it matter?
Next, they're outside, picking through debris, looking for elements to create a battery from. Galen spots a group of guerrillas approaching, and the guerrilla captain in charge is Robert Phillips, a busy bit-part actor who was also in Star Trek's The Cage, appearing as an uncredited space officer. The three separate with plans to meet back at the Science Institute later. The guerrillas go into pursuit. The captain fires his pistol and, of course, misses. Galen hides in a building. A young human boy is watching this as Virdon trips and falls, hurting his leg. Virdon hobbles to hide underneath a stairway. A young woman who's living there protests. She's Arn, played by Zena Bethune.
Zena Bethune was born in New York City to actress Ivy Bethune on February 17, 1945. At age 6 she started taking dance lessons and performed with the New York City Ballet as a teen. Zena made her Broadway debut at the age of 11. She started her television career by appearing in soap operas, which were performed in New York. Later she made the move to Hollywood and did occasional guest television and movie appearances. She loved to act, but dance was her passion. She also tried her hand at choreography. Zeena Bethune's life was cut short on February 12, 2012, 5 days short of her 67th birthday, when she was killed in an apparent hit-and-run in Griffith Park.
Compared to the final script, a lot of dialogue was omitted, as several scenes were cut at this point. That boy, Craig, played by 13-year-old Jackie Earle Haley, approaches the captain and he trades information for food.
Jackie Earle Haley was born in Northridge, California on July 14, 1961. Jackie began appearing in television commercials at the age of 6. As a child, Jackie often did imitations of James Cagney and Mae West. He began his acting career in 1972, when the 11-year-old made an appearance on The Carol Burnett Show. That same year he was the voice of Jamie Boyle in 11 episodes of Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. His big break came in 1976 when he played Kelly Leak in The Bad News Bears. He reprised the role in the sequels. He's one of the few child actors who continued in the trade as an adult. He was passed over after auditioning for A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, but he played Freddy Krueger in the 2010 remake. Jackie Earle Haley has dozens of film credits as an adult. The 63-year-old actor appeared in 4 films last year alone.
I thought he was going to send the apes on a wild goose chase, but then I considered what possible punishment he might face if he did that. The gorilla captain suddenly appears from around a corner, and he pulls Virdon and the woman out of their hiding place. As they're escorting the humans away, the gorilla captain throws a satchel of food onto the rocks for that boy as a reward. We join Burke and Galen back at the Science Institute as Act 2 opens. Galen is tired of waiting around, but Burke says that's all they can do. Burke says they have to follow Virdon's orders. Galen claims that he doesn't take orders. He merely accepts suggestions.
Okay, Alan suggested we sit tight and wait for 24 hours.
There's a shot of a signal officer. It's recut from some episode 3 footage. Next, we see the familiar white horse of General Urko galloping along the rubble-strewn streets of Oakland, California. He's accompanied by an orangutan who, I'm assuming, is Dr. Zaius. Virdon is brought to Urko and the orangutan. If that is Dr. Zaius, he's being awfully quiet. But it is Zaius, and I see he's had several lines cut from this scene. Urko questions the astronaut, but he gets nowhere. Meanwhile, Burke and Galen are sneaking around outside. Burke says it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Inside, Zaius is trying to dissuade Urko from beating Virdon to death. He suggests using the prisoner as bait to capture the other 2 fugitives. Meanwhile, that gorilla captain offers the boy Craig more food if he gets additional information. The woman, Arn, is brought before Urko and Zaius. Her husband, Tomar, was a known rebel leader, and again Urko suggests that she should have been done away with. But Zaius has a better plan for her. Then we skip 3 pages ahead in the script. 2 gorillas dump Virdon into a large cell. He turns around, taking in his surroundings. The boy Craig is there, sitting on a large trunk. The camera pans right, and we see Arn. Where she's seated, I'd have thought she'd have been visible when Virdon was first brought in. For now, he seems to be asking all the questions. But they're going to use the boy and that woman to obtain more information from Virdon. They go back to pick up some of the action on those skipped pages. A gorilla guard is poking his way through the rubble in the street. Burke sneaks up behind him and puts a rope around the gorilla's throat. Galen grabs the gorilla's gun. I'm not certain, but that gorilla could be stuntman actor Dick Dmitri, who went uncredited in the episode. Burke and Galen question the gorilla and discover that Virdon was brought in, but later taken away. And that gorilla doesn't know where Virdon was taken. According to the script, this should have been the end of Act 2, but instead of a fade to black, we do a quick cut to Virdon. Arn indicates that she doesn't know why they were brought there. Craig says that he was caught stealing food. Arn asks, what is this place?
This was kind of famous in my time. It was built with oil money by someone who wanted to live like a 16th century baron.
They're confused by that answer, and the boy asks what Virdon means by his time. Virdon is more focused on why Urko didn't kill him when he had the chance. Craig watches as Virdon tests the strength of the bars on the windows. I'll bet he wishes fellow astronaut Steve Austin, the $6 million man, was there right now. He no sooner gets the bar bent enough to crawl through when a gorilla takes a few shots at him with a rifle.
Could have killed you.
Yeah, they could have, but they didn't. Deliberately. It was an easy shot.
I'm not convinced. We've seen plenty of gorillas miss such easy shots throughout this series. Virdon figures out that the gorillas are using him as a trap to lure the others in. Arn comes running, saying she heard shots. That took a while. How far away could she have been? Craig tells her that Virdon tried to escape. Virdon says he won't try that again for a while. He mentions 24 hours. I guess he thinks his friends will leave him as they had originally planned. Fat chance of that happening. We join Burke and Galen as Burke is still working on restoring that battery. Then to Zaius holding Virdon's family photo. He wonders how it's possible to print such images. Urko couldn't care less. He's more concerned with the fact that Virdon tried to escape. Zaius thinks he can use this photo to his advantage. He already has them together in that fortress. If he can just get Virdon to care for the others as he would his own family, Zaius believes that Virdon will confide in the boy. Act 3 begins by going back to pick up a skipped scene from Act 2. Virdon and the boy introduce themselves to one another. I like how it was changed to Virdon explaining the reasoning behind the handshake to Craig. The script had the boy coming up with that explanation on his own. Only Craig's line about the left hand was added.
It's a very good idea. If the friend hasn't got a knife in his left hand.
I hate to be the one to tell them, but that left hand probably would have been holding a shield in those ancient times. Jumping ahead again, we're back with Galen and Burke, who are trying to make sulfuric acid to get the projector running. Galen prods Burke for their next steps. Then, back at the castle, Arn has found some food. Craig grabs some of it and starts eating. Virdon seizes it and suggests that Arn divide it so there's enough food for today and tomorrow. The boy only seems concerned with the here and now, but he eventually relents. Back at the command post, Urko is preparing for an operation at dawn.
Planning a war party? A search party, Zaius. A search party for the chimpanzee, Galen and Burke. You do it your way, I'll do it mine. Section by section, building by building.
Meanwhile, Virdon and his fellow prisoners are enjoying their meal. Virdon seems lost in thought. When he mentions his friends, Craig asks where they are. Virdon says the boy would be better off if he didn't know, but Craig pushes harder. Eventually, Arn shuts him down.
He's trying to protect us. Can't you see that? He's protecting us.
Arn compares Virdon to Tomar, her late husband. Virdon is about to mention his wife, but he breaks off. We briefly join Galen and Burke, calling it a night. Then, we go back to the dungeon where Virdon is making a toy airplane out of a block of wood. Craig's acceptance of flying machines and manned flight seems to be too contrived, but it's not as far-fetched as Virdon's pipe dream about trying to solve world hunger. He sets the airplane down and crosses to Arn. Virdon mentions that his son would be about the same age as Craig. The words would be seem odd here. I think I'd have said was. In the morning, Galen is watching from behind some debris as guerrilla troops perform a building-by-building search. He sneaks back into the Science Institute to warn Burke, who's working to hook up his new battery. Back in their holding cell, Virdon and the two locals are cozy. They watch as the man sews together a sack for the boy to carry his things.
What things?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You don't have a baseball or a bubble gum or even a crumbled up chocolate cookie.
I think, considering how long he's been trapped in the ape world, that Virdon would eventually realize the things he keeps mentioning mean diddly squat to these humans. Virdon starts to open up to Arn, telling her about a place with a message of hope. And that gets Craig's attention. Virdon goes on to describe the building where they found the hologram projector.
You know that building that's not far from where you live, the one with the big columns in the front and the arched entranceway?
I've been there. There's nothing inside. No food, no clothes, nothing.
Arn says she wants to hear Virdon's stories. Then she reminisces about life on the farm with Tomar. Virdon suggests that she could go back to the farm, meet another man.
Couldn't you go back to the farm?
I've thought about it. But it's easier to do nothing.
Then Virdon notices that the wooden airplane is missing. Now I wonder where it might have gone. He confronts Craig. The boy hides it behind his back and denies taking it. Smooth move. When the kid tries to run, Virdon grabs him, and Craig smashes the model onto the ground, breaking it in two. In the script, Virdon slaps the brat across the face. Yikes! Either way, the result is the same. The kid screams, "I hate you," and he runs off. So where's he gonna go? They're prisoners, right? Well, we cut to Craig being escorted to the guerrilla captain to get his reward. Oops.
Well, tell me. Don't waste my time. Do you know where the outlaw ape and the human are?
When we come back in Act 4, Craig is back in the castle with the others. He crosses to the fireplace and picks up the somehow repaired airplane. Just how long was Craig gone? Arn tells Craig that Virdon had made the airplane just for him.
He made the airplane just for you.
Told the gorilla.
Urko and the guerrilla captain are leading 5 more guerrillas on a raid. The guerrilla sergeant in this scene is played by Wayne Foster. His total number of acting credits can be counted on one hand. He'll also play a lieutenant in an upcoming episode, which will be his last known on-screen appearance. Urko and company enter the Science Institute, where they find nothing except a large mound of rubble hiding the doorway where that holograph projector chamber was. Back at the castle, Virdon and Craig make up. Virdon says that his friends are probably long gone, but he needs to get out somehow. Craig says he knows a way out.
Why Why didn't you tell me that?
I liked it here. I had enough to eat, and the gorillas said they'd give me lots more if I helped them.
Craig is let out again for another meeting with the captain. He leads that captain away on a wild goose chase. They're looking for an imaginary gun he'd supposedly taken from Virdon and thrown out a window. When the gorilla is underneath that window, where Virdon had pried the bar, Virdon jumps down on top of the gorilla. Which has me thinking, where's the guard that would have been covering that window previously? Also, I have a hard time believing that a human could overpower a gorilla, yet it seems to happen in practically every episode. Arn crawls down and they all skedaddle. Back at headquarters, Zaius surmises that Burke would leave some clue behind, just in case Virdon escapes,
They would leave something behind.
telling him where they'd be. Zaius tells Urko to take him there. We cut to a street scene. The three escapees come up out of a sewer right in front of the Science Institute. Inside, Virdon sees that the vault has been blocked by rocks once again. We cut to Urko, Zaius, and 6 others riding toward that Science Institute. Virdon, Arn, and Craig seem to have made short work of that rubble, and Virdon activates the hologram. They don't get very far into the recording before they hear horses. They hide. Zaius sees that holographic projector and he scolds Urko. Again, the buttons just happen to be pressed in the proper order to turn the thing on. Truth be told, I probably would have failed to get the thing going because I always press buttons from left to right, like most members of Western populations who read from left to right. Burke is listening along as the holographic scientist gives the location of the information he's seeking.
The vault is embedded in concrete on the lower level of the Midtown Railway Station.
Urko asks what a railway station is.
I've seen pictures of them. We passed such a place when we rode in. A long, narrow building. Come.
The apes have the advantage of horses, but Craig says he knows a quicker way to get there.
The apes will have to ride through the cities, through places where buildings have fallen into the streets and no horses can pass.
They go back down into the sewers. Meanwhile, Galen is watching in awe as Burke boots up several ancient computers. They light up, running open reel tape transports, spewing out continuous form feed paper printouts, you name it.
Could man ever have known so much and done so little with it?
The runaway humans crawl out of a sewer and run to the railway station. It's a race against time as Dr. Zaius, Urko, and the rest of the apes are galloping along at breakneck speed. The escapees find Burke and Galen in that computer depository of knowledge.
Hey, I thought you were dead. Listen, we spent 2 hours breaking into this place. It's a gold mine.
Yes. It is. But it'll be a mausoleum if we don't get out. Urko and Zaius are on their way here right now. We gotta move. Come on.
As they were leaving the railway station, I noticed a mailbox. It seemed to be unusually clean when compared to everything else all around. Just struck me as odd, that's all. Something else that tickled my fancy, how the humans no sooner exit stage left than the camera pans back to see Urko and his team galloping in. It's a much better setup than what the script had described. The apes enter the computer room and find the computers running, with paper still shooting out of the printer. Zaius tears some off and he scans it.
Destroy everything in here. Burn this place to the ground. Quick!
But Urko wants to preserve the knowledge. He says it would be safe in their hands.
We're not like humans.
Would we really be better off or safer? Remember, once the knowledge in here is set free, it will spread out of control.
I will be in control.
You are now. You have weapons, troops.
Urko has a change of heart and orders his gorillas to burn it.
Burn it. Burn it!
Then, in a possible goof, It sounds to me like Mark Leonard as Urko says he's going back to the council to kill Burke.
Bert is no longer of any use to us. I'll go back to the castle and kill him.
It was a line that wasn't scripted, and it could be that he said Virdon and it was just merely muffled by his prosthetics, but I played it back multiple times, listening carefully through headphones, and I thought it sounded like Burke every time.
Bert is no longer of any use to us. Bert is no longer of any use to us. Bert.
Add to that, there's a confused look on Booth Coleman's face right at the end of Mark Leonard's line. Anyway, the guerrillas set fire to the form feed paper, and there's a huge explosion. Rather than leaving them behind to face retribution in the city, Virdon, Burke, and Galen escort Craig and Arn to her brother-in-law's farm. Burke and Galen go on ahead to arrange things at the farm while Virdon says his last goodbyes. He gives her one last longing look, and then the two astronauts and their chimpanzee companion continue along on their ongoing journey across the planet of the apes. This episode jumped around too much for me. I think they might have made edits to meet time constraints. I wasn't really invested in the story too much. The woman didn't seem attractive enough for Virdon to fall in love, and he is technically married. The filming techniques were what piqued my interest. Many of the shots in this episode made more of an impression than any from the previous episodes. And when compared to the script, I think most of the changes they made actually improved the final product. Can you believe that Virdon was supposed to slap Craig across the face? That'd never fly today. Even with those changes, I'm still surprised that an intelligent astronaut would talk so freely about so many things that he remembered from his time. The differences from one world to the other are rather stark. So, would someone who knows nothing of flight really accept it? Would they immediately speak freely of flying or use the term airplane? I don't know. When I reviewed The Trap a few months back, I didn't give much thought to the debris, figuring they had just brought in a few dump trucks full of discarded building materials and office supplies. But for this episode, it did strike me just how much destruction there was. Then I thought, wasn't there an earthquake disaster film around that time in the 1970s? Well, that one thought sent me down a deep rabbit hole where I discovered that, yes, Universal Studios' blockbuster disaster film, Earthquake, was indeed filmed in 1974. But the Planet of the Apes series was a 20th Century Fox production. So I spent several hours searching, trying to find some evidence that the Planet of the Apes series producers had possibly gone to Universal Studios to use the earthquake street sets. I was hitting a wall hard. Even artificial intelligence gave me an emphatic no when I asked that question. Universal and Fox didn't use each other's studios. It wasn't until I had moved on and I was doing some other research about the episode that I found some additional information. That guest star, Zena Bethune, was once quoted as saying that The Legacy was filmed on the same MGM backlot sets as the film Earthquake. Now I'm stuck wondering why Universal was filming over at MGM. They had perfectly good backlot sets of their own. But I've got proof. The scene where Virdon, Burke, and Galen are hiding from the gorillas was indeed filmed on the MGM backlot. That marquee stands out, quite literally, and is easily identifiable in an aerial photograph of the studio. Now, using those sets allowed the story to evolve from the first draft's odd collection of buildings to what we see in this final episode. I happened to glean a few more little tidbits during my deep dive research. That yappy dog the actors kept trying to ignore as they were walking into Oakland, it was a real stray that kept running into their shots. According to Zena Bethune, again, actor James Naughton, who played Peter Burke in the series, fell in love with that little dog, and he eventually took it home with him. Several scenes take place in a castle. That's right, a castle in the middle of Oakland, California. Want to know why? It was the castle set they used in Mel Brooks' comedy film Young Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
It was scheduled to be torn down, but there was just enough time for the Apes crew to come in and get their shots before it was slated to be demolished. But wait, there's more. The female character Arn and the boy Crake are supposed to remind Virdon of his family back home. Well, this caused a bit of a problem. If you'll recall, in the very first episode, Virdon goes back into the spaceship for the magnetic disc, and he finds a photo of his family. The original photo was of Ron Harper, along with his real wife and one of the producer's sons. But Ron's wife had dark hair in that photo. This episode featured guest star Zena Bethune, a blonde, to represent the memory of his wife. So, that photo had to be reshot with a blonde actress, and that newer photo was cut in to replace the original in that first episode before it aired. So, we never got to see Ron Harper's real wife on screen. Also, that magnetic disc Virdon had gone back for was brought up in the first draft for this episode, but it was omitted from the final draft script. Okay, so that about wraps it up. It wasn't the best episode, but it was worth a watch for some of the fine cinematography. I didn't realize I was going so long. Sorry about that. Give a like, comment below, subscribe, you know the drill. I hear it all helps with the YouTube metrics. Be sure to keep an eye out for my next episode of Old Joe's Reminiscence.